So welcome to A Taste Tomorrow. Today we have Dr. Penny Smith from La Trobe University. He's going to talk to us about legumes and why legumes should make the Taste Tomorrow shortlist. Penny, what might people find surprising to learn about legumes?
Well, one quick fact, I think a lot of people don't know that peanuts are legumes. So they're a really weird legume actually, because they get a flower and they produce a peanut which then gets stuck into the ground underneath the plant. So often they're called ground nuts. But I think one of the most exciting things for me is that legumes can form an interaction with a bacteria, and that gives them the opportunity to get nitrogen out of the air. And because plants need fertilizer and they need nitrogen fertilizer, this interaction allows them to get free fertilizer. And so that's pretty exciting, I think.
Is that how the production of legumes makes agriculture more sustainable, through this interaction with the soil?
Yeah, so it's really, legumes are a really important part of our farming systems because they can form this interaction, and you can grow them one crop of legumes and they will fix the nitrogen and it'll go into the soil, and some of that nitrogen can be used by the next crop. So you don't have to use as much fertilizer on that next crop. So if you were, say, you had some chickpeas growing and then the next crop that you grew was wheat, the wheat can't form this interaction and fix nitrogen, but they can still use some of the nitrogen left in the soil by the legume crop. I mean, you might ask why nitrogen fertilizer is important and why it's good to get free nitrogen. Most of the processes that produce nitrogen fertilizer require huge amounts of energy. So that's expensive in terms of the cost of the energy, and it's also expensive because it contributes to climate change. And a lot of the fertilizer that is put on plants, the nitrogen then runs off in the rain and it's not used by the plant, so it's wasted, but it gets into waterways and it causes pollution. So a legume which gets free nitrogen from the air, it keeps it in a form where it stays in the soil and it's useful for the next crop and at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, that's so important in this current situation that we're in with climate change and having to limit the amount of greenhouse gases and impact that we're having on the climate. And these are obviously just so good for that because of their ability to fix nitrogen. What are you doing? So, I mean, there can still be a lot of research that can go into improving legumes, obviously. So what is your group and your research doing?
So I work on the nitrogen fixation by legumes. One of the projects we're working on is to find chickpeas that are more efficient at fixing nitrogen by interacting with these bacteria that we call rhizobia. And so what we're actually screening through a whole lot of different chickpea varieties to have a look at whether we can find some that actually fix more nitrogen. And then what we really want to know is what makes those different to the ones that don't fix nitrogen very well. And so that's a major goal, is to find better fixing chickpeas. But we also are just trying to understand the interaction. So I said, you know, glibly, oh, well, the bacteria and the plant interact and they fix nitrogen, but it's an amazingly complicated system, which has all these kind of exciting things that you have to think about. It's called a symbiosis. So both of the partners benefit from this symbiosis. The bacteria interacts with the plant, and what it gets out of it is a place to live, and it gets fed the sugars that it needs and some of the nutrients that it needs to try and fix nitrogen. And then the plant, of course, gets the nitrogen. But to do that, the plant has to completely change its roots and produce somewhere for the bacteria to live, which we call the nodules.
Yeah, I think that's amazing, because we often think of bacteria or a bacteria infection as a very negative thing, but in this case, it's a really positive. Like,
yes.
they're both helping each other out and making this amazing environment where they, the legumes can grow better, the bacteria have somewhere to live, and it's, in terms of agriculture, just incredibly sustainable and beneficial. So it's an amazing system, but as you say, incredibly complex.
Yes, and so we think about, I mean, a lot of people are talking now about our gut microflora, how important that is. Well, it's the same with a plant. There's this whole group of positive bacteria that can interact with the plant, help it survive things, and rhizobia are one of those groups that interact very specifically with legumes and can give such a benefit to the plant and to sustainable agriculture.